Congressman, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Walk us through next week. Is this going to be deja vu all over again? Are we headed for another shutdown? Or do you feel confident that leaders can at least continue on a path towards a deal on both immigration and the budget?
Well, we certainly could. I don't have any reason to believe that the situation has dramatically changed. We're really not much closer to an agreement on DACA. You know, when Leader McConnell said we will continue to talk about DACA, that seems as though what we've been doing. The president actually makes it much more difficult for us to come together when he, continues to use the language that he does. And let's face it, when it comes to the budget, what we're really talking about is just kicking the can down the road for a few more weeks. So we're not really making any progress.
On immigration, do you think that if there is a deal that can pass the Senate with 60, 70 votes, like some people are talking about as a potential scenario, that Democrats in the House would be able to support that kind of a fix, or would there be some concern, especially on the left of the party?
Well, I think the presumption is that if we can get 70 votes in the Senate, that there's been some reasonable compromises made. Look, we know we're not in charge. The Republicans are in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. So anything that we get on DACA, anything on immigration is going to require us to have to balance the interest of providing certainty for dreamers by supporting some things that might not be what we would draft in the first place, say on border security. But if we get into what they call chain migration, which is a pejorative.
Family-sponsored migration.
Family-sponsored migration, and dramatically impact that, or as the president wants to do, shut it down, or have an immigration system that does not recognize the need for diversity, that's going to be a whole lot tougher for us to get to.
What do you think is the appetite? Your state, Michigan, frankly almost went for President Trump, or did go, excuse me, for President Trump. I was one of the last ones to call on election night. I was flashing back to that. I was thinking through this.
I flash back to it all the
time. We were watching Michigan very late into the evening.
Yeah.
But how does this play in your state, the idea that Republicans have essentially said, look, Democrats shut down the government for what they would call illegal immigrants? I mean, how much of that is a problem for Democrats in your state?
Well, Democrats in my state support immigration reform and support doing something about the dreamers. So do independents, so do Republicans for that matter. What they don't like is the fact that we're not really at all talking about the big economic questions that we face in this country. We're leaving American cities behind, many of them. We're having a debate about Russia and the memo. We're having a debate about something that the American people have already come to a conclusion on, dreamers. 80-some% of the American people want us to do something about it. And those conversations, as important as they might be, are crowding out the real work that we're doing. And then we're putting handcuffs on government by funding government for a few weeks at a time. I mean, that's what they're frustrated by. Not that we can't come to agreement on these other things, but that the fact that we can't come to agreement is keeping us from doing anything that they really think should be front and center.
Do you think that Chuck Schumer made a mistake when he led his party towards shutting down the government over DACA? It is, as you say, a very popular issue, but you could see the tide in the polling starting to turn, and people starting to say, well, yes, we want to fix for the dreamers, but we also think you guys should keep our government going.
Yeah, well, of course, hindsight's 20/20. My view on it is this: if you have a strategy, you have to stick with your strategy. You can't change midstream.
You think that's what Schumer did?
I mean, it did not feel like we went into it with a strategy that we could sustain. And I actually think there's some value in continually, just by the actions of the Republicans, pointing out that they govern. And what I fear is that this sort of uncertainty in terms of what Democratic strategies seem to be between both ends of the building, not just among Democrats and Republicans, but between the House and the Senate, that we gave the Republicans a talking point as an excuse for what has been really an abysmal record. I mean, they've done one thing, and I would argue with what that is, and that's the tax bill. Haven't passed the budget, really haven't moved anything on the big issues that the president ran on. Like, he keeps talking about his infrastructure package. I mean,
we have not seen that.
Where is
fair.
It? Yeah.
He did try to talk about it in the State of the Union. I mean, is there anything that you heard from this president in that State of the Union, the infrastructure bill? I mean, were you encouraged by that?
No, because what I've come to know about Donald Trump pretty quickly is that words are cheap. Action speaks louder than words, and he's liable to say anything. He'll just say whatever comes into his mind. He talks about his infrastructure plan, and it's really, I heard in one interview he said, it's really doing well. Where? I mean, we haven't even seen it. There's no ink dry on this thing. So it's frustrating. I didn't really hear anything in the State of the Union that gave me any reason to be encouraged, except that because he read the speech in a sort of monotone, he didn't come off with the normal sort of bombast that we've been accustomed to.
What do you think, one of the things we were talking a little bit about earlier on the show is Nancy Pelosi and her potential impact on the midterm elections, but also her role as a leader in your party. Do you think that she is potentially something that Republicans can use against Democrats, and should she consider stepping aside for new leadership in the party?
Well, I think we have to make those decisions every 2 years after the elections. I think it's a real mistake for Democrats who may have differences with Leader Pelosi to try to undermine her ability to lead us right now. She's the leader of Democrats in the House. We make those decisions every 2 years. I don't think any of us should prejudge what that decision might be in November of 2018, but it's a mistake, I think, even for those who might have some differences, to miss the point that when you elect somebody, you stand with them. You may disagree with them openly, but you don't try to undermine their ability to do the job that they were elected to do.
Congressman Kildee, thank you so much.